Hey everybody, welcome to episode 103. Today we are here with special guest Joe Casabona. Thanks for joining us, Joe. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad. Thanks for asking. My name is Kyle. I am co-founder of Real Big Marketing, an agency doing WordPress stuff here in Jackson, Michigan. Not too terribly far from Joe. You're over in Pennsylvania?
Yes, sir. I currently live in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I am moving to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, about an hour south in June.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. So Joe is a front-end developer at Crowd Favorite, one of those cool WordPress agencies doing some amazing things, and he's been there for not too terribly long, as far as I know.
No, about a little over a year and a half now, so it'll be 2 years in September.
Oh, okay. Kind of longer than I thought. Okay. So we're going to talk a lot about that and all the things you do. Before we do that, we're going to jump into our quick picks of the week real fast. My quick pick is a blog post that our very own Mark Benzakin wrote just maybe a week or so ago. And I enjoyed this because Mark, he's another producer. He wasn't able to join us tonight due to a previous commitment, but he will be on with us often. And he wrote this article about why he takes his kids to WordCamps. I just thought that was fun. And Mark's been taking some of his kids to WordCamps for a little while now. I've gotten to know a couple of his kids, and it's always really interesting to see them there. And they're charming children for sure, but mostly how Mark describes his reasoning for continuing to do this is really eye-opening and makes me feel really good. So I just recommend the read. It's something that Mark is passionately talking about all the time. So I'll share a link to this on the event page. And Joe, do you have anything interesting to share with us today?
Well, I actually just wrote a blog post last week about a topic that was pretty interesting. I had my students talk about certain aspects of technology and how they think they're going to create or solve social issues. And one of my students picked flipped classrooms, which, if you're not familiar with the idea, a flipped classroom is when you have your students watch the lectures at home and then you work through assignments in class. So it's essentially, instead of saying like, all right, this is the lesson for today, here are 5 math problems to reinforce that lesson, you say, watch the lesson at home, and we're going to go through these 5 math problems in class. And she experienced a flipped classroom at the University of Pittsburgh before she came to the University of Scranton. And she said it didn't really work because the teacher would send them like Khan Academy videos and then not really adjust the material in class. So, it's not, well, it's I guess WordPress related in the sense that I teach WordPress. But I thought, I write my thoughts up over at my website, but I thought it was interesting that most teachers I talk to really love the flipped classroom idea, but the students I've talked to about it are not a fan. And I think it's mostly because they're watching lectures, but they're not really engaging with the teacher. And so they're not getting to ask questions in the moment, like while they think of those questions while they're seeing the lecture. So I thought it was really interesting because like I said, teachers love it, but students don't seem too keen on it, at least yet, and I'm sure there's like some balance to be struck there, but.
Super cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Joe. That sounds like engaging stuff. So you have a URL where people can read more about that or anything?
Yeah, I can send it over to you, but it's over at casabona.org.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Joe. So thank you for sharing that. And at this point, let's talk about your background a little, Joe. Let's go back before WordPress and before your career on the internet, and get us up to speed with a little bit of who you were before you really started on your professional journey, and what is it that you really set out to do? What did you have your eyes set on when you were young?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I was probably a really weird little kid.
Probably.
Definitely, absolutely. And I attribute a lot of that to Ace Ventura because that's like one of the first movies I remember watching, and he was super weird in that movie. But when I was a kid, I was like big into drama club, and always kind of computers a little bit. So to give you guys some frame of reference, I'm 30, so I was born in 1985. I'm very much a 90s kid. and we got our first family computer in like 1996 or something like that. And I just remember like messing around with it, and thinking like it was like really, really interesting. We got one with like a CD burner in 1998, and so from like 1998 to 2001, I just like made mix CDs for people, like underground, like sold them for $5 a pop. I was like a very realistic Zach Morris in the fact that like I would scheme ways to make money, but they were never as crazy as what you would see on Saved by the Bell. And there's not a whole lot before my web development career because I started that in high school as well. I was 14 or 15 when my church came to me and they said, "Hey, you're good with computers. Can you make us a website?" And I said, "I don't know how to." And they said, "Oh, well, we'll pay you." And I said, "Yeah, I'll make you a website. You'll pay me?" So I made, yeah, totally, I could do that. So that was like 2000. I made them a website, and I loved it, and I kept doing it. So I've been doing it since 2000, 2001.
Wow, that's great. So someone approached you just because you know computers, because if you know computers, you must know how to make websites.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like which this is weird. I think I don't want to sound like sexist or whatever, but I think it's like I was asked to babysit these kids as like a 14, 15-year-old guy, but also the kids were like 10 or 11 and 12. Like they didn't really need babysitting. I just had to make sure they didn't kill each other. And they were part of the parish, and they knew that I was good with computers, and so they knew me, and yeah, I like the rest is history. I was like, yeah, sure. My dad's like, it's the church, you should do it for free. And I was like, okay, Dad, $200, and I'm 15. Like that's a lot of money to a 15-year-old. That's like 4 Xbox games.
I know. So fascinating that you kind of got pulled into it, at such an early age, just because of that apparently related skill set, and that you were hooked right away. So I don't know too many other people that I've talked with who got into it so early and basically like this is what you've been doing. You haven't had extensive time spent in other industries working professionally. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, this is like I think about that all the time. If I wasn't a web developer, like I think more if computers didn't exist, I have no idea what I would do because like I can't make things with my hands. Like my brothers like build stuff, and I can't do any of that. So it's really interesting to me that like I found what I love to do so early, and I'm still doing that today. Like I think I'm super lucky because like I have no idea what I would do if I wasn't doing computer related work in some fashion.
Amazing. So walk us through a little bit of what happened next as you were in your teenage years. You were starting to learn how to make websites. How did you start turning that into a real income early on?
Yeah. So after I mean like I was like psh, my first web design job and I'm getting paid. This is easy. It's not easy though. What I really loved about the whole website creation process, and this is again like 2000, 2001. So I was using an educational version of Microsoft Front Page to make these websites. And what I was doing is I would make something with the editor and then look at the code just to see how things were done. And I loved that it was like I was flexing like the creative part of my brain and then like the logical part of my brain. So I mean, my next step after that was, well, if somebody's willing to pay me to do something I like to do, I should probably find more people that are willing to pay me to do something I like to do. So I spoke to some friends. Their parents had businesses, so I was like kind of churning out these really simple, but these simple websites, in high school. And I found a really good niche market with my friends' bands. Like I made like 4 or 5 websites for my friends and like the bands that they were in. because so it was like churches and bands, and then like really small like construction businesses.
Were you ever in a band?
Yes, very for a short amount of time. I play the drums and not very well. So my friends would come over. Like we didn't have any like original songs, but my friends would come over and we would jam out and like play like Metallica and the Misfits. They would play. I would play along because I can't. I'm not Lars Ulrich. Like I can't. But but yeah. So I did play a bit of live music, I guess, but again, not very well. So.
Okay. So you were making church websites, band websites, small construction companies, you said. You started to do that throughout your teenage years in the early 2000s. And then, how did that, did you keep freelancing for many years, or did you move into agency work?
Yeah, so I freelanced from halfway through high school until I still do freelance work today. A bit, like when I have time. But I did that basically all throughout college for about 2 years after college. And then I got a job at my alma mater doing web development work for them. So I went from kind of freelance and in school to freelance full time to working for an organization doing their web design work, and then I moved into agency work with Crowd Favorite. So Crowd Favorite's like I have like 13 years of experience before that, but Crowd Favorite's my first like agency that I'm working at.
Awesome. So that brings us to today. You've got a lot of experience in this industry. Let's talk, a little bit now about the evolution of what you were technically doing over that time. How has your implementation changed over the years? The tools that you've used changed over the years from the beginning to the end?
Yeah, man, that is something I think about all the time because, I'm a front end developer. Until I got to Crowd Favorite, I thought I was a little bit of both front and back end, and then I met some real back end developers, and I am a front end developer. I know my limits. Well, I know what I'm really good at and what I want to get better at. But yeah, so I think about that all the time because today, like front end tools are like grunt and gulp and get some node and like Bower everything, and I think most of that was nonsense. But like when I first started, it was like, oh, I'm going to download a program and see what HTML it generates, right? Or even like when I got more mature, it was like, all right, well, I'm going to put all my HTML in this file and all my CSS in this file, and then we'll have a nice looking website, right? So like, yeah, started with front page. When I got to college, my friend Steve Mikosh, who is actually the person who introduced me to WordPress, and he also was the technical editor for my book. He looked at me with horror, like, you're using front page? And he introduced me to Notepad++. So from like 2003 until like whenever Sublime got popular, basically. No, from like 2003 until I got a Mac, which was like 2008. I was using Notepad++ and FileZilla, and then I got Coda when I got a Mac, and I'm like, integrated uploads and an editor. This is the best thing ever. And I thought that was amazing. And like now, I use like Git to push things to servers, and Gulp to compile Sass and minify JavaScript, and everything is magic now. Like that's so. It's, but I mean, like you know this, like front end tools or just web development tools in general have changed so much that like full stack developer is such a weird term now, because like just to be a front end developer, you need to kind of understand everything to get your tools up and running. So yeah, I think that was a really long answer, but I think I answered your question in there. My current setup is Atom. I'm using Git and GitHub for everything, and then Sass and Gulp are the things that I use every day.
Wow. Do you guys use GitHub heavily for your Crowd Favorite work?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know what the ramifications of their new pricing structure will be for us, but yeah, all of our projects are somewhere out there on GitHub, um,
Hmm.
like private repos and stuff like that. So for our
I'm
client.
kind of curious about what your take would be on this adjustment that GitHub has made that's kind of shaken things a little.
Yeah, I think it's great for single develop. Like, I mean, like I'm probably going to get rid of my Bitbucket account now because I can just have private repos in GitHub now for free, essentially.
Right.
Or so that email says. Um, but I mean, I saw that I've seen chatter between like let's say Brian Bogsgaard and Pippin Williamson, where they're like, private repos are going to go from costing us like $70 to like $500 now.
Right.
Um, and I understand GitHub needs to make money, but it seems like they could have done something that, like, this was a very all or nothing change, and I think they probably could have done like a slow rollout first, or at least like a warning, like, hey, you have a private repo, it's about to get real for you. Like your credit card is going to be really upset in the next couple months. But it seemed just like a surprise to everybody.
Yeah.
So
It is. It is. It's a big change for certain types of businesses, especially large teams. Like, wow.
yeah, yeah, and we're a team of about 40 or 50, um, and I know, like, we all have access to our private repos. So
Yeah.
I don't know if to save money it's going to be like, well, these 4 people are working on this project, so these are the 4 people who will have access. But um, yeah, I haven't talked to the decision makers for that, but I assume that's going to continue to be our tool, because I think changing it would cost a bit more even in the short run, like getting everybody changed and moved over to say Bitbucket or something like that,
Sure.
which I don't even know if it's any cheaper.
So, aside from your front end development, something that you do a lot of that you're pretty passionate about, and it's been kind of a thread along your career is teaching. You've done a lot of teaching. So tell us a little bit about where you got started in that being a part of what you do.
Yeah. Well, it probably goes back to me being in drama club. Just like I like being up in front of people. I was told I was very good. I try to do this thing where I don't say I'm really good unless somebody tells me I'm really good, because people think they're good singers, but they're terrible singers. So a lot of people told me that I was pretty natural in front of people. And then when I went to grad school at the University of Scranton, I got a teaching assistantship, and so I had the opportunity to teach a little bit then, and I really liked it. Um, I thought it was cool that I got to kind of impart knowledge to kids who were basically my peers at that time. I was like 22, 23, and they were like 18 to 21. So when I graduated, I said to the university, I said, hey, I'm going to keep freelancing, but if you guys need a teacher to teach part-time, let me know. And sure enough, that spring, like it was like one fall that went by, and then in the spring they're like, hey, we need somebody to teach our intro to computers class. So I taught that. Students really liked me, probably again because I was still pretty close to their age at that point. And I liked uh, that I could introduce different ideas to them, that people kind of assume everybody already knows. So like Facebook is free because they're like mining our data, right? And like that seems like it's obvious to people in our field, but I remember my students' minds were blown the first time I said that, and I'm like, yes, let's keep talking about this. Um, and then like it evolved from there. So this semester I have that intro to computer course, but I was also teaching web development, like 101 essentially, so HTML and CSS, and then 2D animation, which I basically made into a JavaScript course where I taught them mostly jQuery and a little bit of Canvas and some SVG stuff. So, and that was really fun because I would basically show them something on CodePen, And I would code something while they watched on CodePen, and I'd be like, all right, take this and change it in some way and show me what you got. And they seem to really like that. So it's just, I don't know, it's a lot of fun. I like explaining what I do to people, especially to people who are interested in what I do. So yeah, I really dig it.
Nice. So what sort of teaching things do you do now?
I started this in November, but I kind of evolved it a little bit since then. I started a new business called WPinOneMonth.com. And I initially made that live in-person workshops. So, there are so many great video resources for WordPress, right? There's Bob WP, and there's WP 101, and there's WP sessions, and you can send out sponsor invoices to all of them if you want. I noticed that there wasn't a lot of live in-person stuff. So I was like, oh yeah, the WordPress could totally use this. The problem was in Scranton, people still didn't really see the value of paying a person to teach them something, I guess. Like, Scranton's a very small and weird city. So I decided to kind of change it up and do live webinars. So I still have the live aspect of it. People can sign up and attend a live webinar. And I think the real value there is that, like I said with the flipped classrooms, like, people can't ask a video a question, but if I'm there talking about something, people can say, oh yeah, I use Paid Memberships Pro, and they were the last webinar that I did. And I've been trying to get this to work. So now I can ask and answer that question live in the webinar. So I try to do one live webinar a month. Most of them are, I team up with a partner, and their kind of, I guess, financial support lets me release the webinar for free to the web, and documentation and stuff like that to everybody. So, and it makes them free. So, if you go to the WP in 1 Month YouTube channel, you'll see Beaver Builder and Paid Memberships Pro. And then we have another one coming up next month, and I'm trying to get a bunch lined up for the rest of the year. So it's cool. I'm teaching WordPress and WordPress-related stuff to people online.
That's pretty cool. So you've been teaching that stuff for a little while. How have you seen things change over time in terms of like the demand and maybe the audience for WordPress-specific stuff? WordPress's rise has been rapid and fast just over a few short years. What have you actually seen?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when I first started using and then essentially teaching my clients WordPress, I had to convince them that WordPress was the way to go. But now it's people are asking for it. They're saying, "Oh yeah, I want WordPress." So I'm finding that it's a lot of people are coming because they have installed WordPress already, and maybe they found a theme that they like too, but they can't get the theme that they picked to do exactly what they wanted to do. Or they're using some page builder and they're trying to figure out the best way to do this, or they can't find the right plugin. So it's interesting. I guess the evolution I've seen is that people are coming in knowing nothing about WordPress. But now people are coming in and they might even already have a WordPress website. So like, I don't necessarily have to explain to them, oh, well, you go and you sign up for hosting, and maybe you have a one-click install, and then you have WordPress which is a content management system. Now it's, well, yeah, I have a WordPress site, and I wanted to do this specifically. Can you teach me how to do that?
What do you love about teaching WordPress to students?
I think, man, what do I love about teaching WordPress to students? I think it's great because what I'm finding is a lot of students come in, so specifically college students, right? So the last example I gave was mostly workshop or webinar attendees. But college students aren't really thinking about their brand, like their personal brand or their online presence is maybe a better word. So I love the fact that like I'm introducing them to, hey, you have Facebook and maybe you have Twitter. Do you think about how you look to people on Facebook or Twitter? Have you thought about the fact that people, somebody can go and buy yourname.com and then set up a website, or redirect it to donaldtrump.com if you run against him for president. And then I gave them that example. I said Jeb Bush didn't own jebbush.com. Carly Fiorina didn't own carlyfiorina.org. And those two websites were used essentially against them, right? Like those two domains. So, I love telling them about that. And then I say, hey, also, it's not impossible to set up a website anymore. Like you can go to wordpress.com, get a WordPress site, and then point, your domain there. So you can have like johnnystudent.com. And it's your website, and you're controlling that and your online presence. And it's just cool because, they're on Snapchat and Twitter, and that one that makes me really sad, Yik Yak. Have you heard of Yik Yak?
Gosh, no.
It's like anonymous location-based statuses. So, like, if you're near a college campus, other people near a college campus can post things like, oh, this food is disgusting, or way more vulgar stuff than what I just said. So, they're on all these social networks, but I like teaching them the possible ramifications and also how they can control that. And WordPress is kind of central to that for me. I'm like, you have your website, you can publish stuff, you can show people things, and then you can also integrate that with like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and whatever.
What are some of the challenges that you face teaching, considering that when I look at teaching WordPress and stuff, and we have to do this to some degree. I host a meetup, I teach sessions at WordCamps, and I train clients all the time. So I know what you're talking about to some degree. And I find there's a lot that's challenging about teaching WordPress. And it's also fascinating to me to reflect on how, as technology has rapidly evolved, just the simple fact that I'm teaching like people who are not super technically savvy how to make websites, which when you started this, just because you know how to use a computer, people were like, you should make a website too, because it's the same thing, right? And now technology has evolved so much that we're diving deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, and the non-technical person is having to accomplish things that previously were limited to only very technical people. So to end my ramble, in this kind of interesting, rapidly evolving space, what are the challenges that you really face teaching something like WordPress?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think probably, especially when I started, I think the hardest part for me was realizing that WordPress is easy to me because I've been using WordPress for 9, 10, 11 years, right? So I would do something just like last year, like this time last year, I was showing my students how to use WordPress, and this was what gave me the idea for my current WordCamp talk. I explained the difference between posts and pages basically like this. So a post is like a blog post, right? So it's in reverse chronological order, and a page is just a static page. And that's it. That's all I said. And my students looked at me like I was insane. They were like, what are you talking about? Because to me and you, we're in WordPress every day, right? The difference between a post and a page is intuitive, or it's second nature to us. But if you show somebody a post and a page from the same website, they're going to have probably no idea what the difference is. Tell me which one's the post and which one's the page. Well, they're both web pages. This is an article, I guess. I don't know. So I think that the challenge is distilling the things that I know from experience from the stuff that's going to sound super weird to a first-time learner. So posts and custom post types. They both have the word post in it. They're basically the same. What's the difference? It's things like that that's really challenging, and I have fun coming up with analogies and different ways to show that difference.
Fascinating. Yeah, definitely. So you come up with a lot of creative stuff, and I definitely agree that there's so much that, kind of we take for granted that does seem intuitive to us, that there are types of content that are, hierarchical, and others that are, like date chronological, I should say. And anyway, what, no, I had a good question. This one. Okay. So, a lot of people understand this stuff. A lot of us, who are used to the web and how the web works, and get these concepts intuitively and can do it. How come we're not also good at teaching it?
Yeah. So it's okay. I have a theory that I have a theory, and then I have like what I actually think. And I think that when people teach WordPress, right, or anything really, they want to make it seem easy to the person learning so that they're more comfortable, right? So I would say something like, well, to make a post, obviously you just create post, add new, right? But that doesn't make it seem easy. That makes it seem like I didn't know, like to the learner, it's like, oh, I didn't know that. And it sounds like I should have, right? And I think, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I think that probably a lot of people have trouble teaching because it is easy to them, and they feel like it should be easy to other people. And I have just the perfect example, and it's somebody that I know personally. It's somebody I know personally, and he would essentially go on these rants about how dumb users are. Like how dumb users are, and then they should already know this stuff. So like, how could they not know how to create a post or a page? Like that's just, users are so stupid. And I just want to be like, so are users? You can't expect everybody to know everything you know and then still call people stupid. You know what I mean? Like, it's either you're so good at what you do because you know what you know, or and you should treat people like, well, what I do is difficult, and it is difficult, right? People pay me because I've been doing it for 13 years. Or just admit that you don't know anything and that you're as dumb as everybody else, I guess. Like, that was kind of tangential, but I think my overarching point in that was, I think a lot of people have trouble teaching because it's hard. It's sometimes hard to empathize with the learner when you're so ingrained in something. And it's just like with anything. Like, people have certain political views because they're based on things that they've seen and they've experienced. And it's very hard to empathize with somebody who's experienced the exact opposite. So I think if you want to be a good teacher, empathy is key. You need to know that the person that is sitting down with you to learn from you does not know everything that you know, and that's why they're there. So you need to have patience, and you need to make them feel comfortable, not by making it seem easy, but by reinforcing that, hey, when I first learned this, it was hard. It didn't make any sense to me. And it makes sense to me now because I know it. And you'll get there too.
What do you think about the scope of this issue in our industry, or is this even an issue? Would you say that there are just a few people out there who are just not great teachers, but really good at what they do? Or would you say that this is a pretty pervasive problem in our industry, that very few people with the technical capabilities have the talent and patience to train newcomers? What do you think about that?
I think that there are people who are really good teachers, right? That's a given. I think that most people could learn to be a good teacher, but I do think that there is a thought process among, I'll just say, developers, so front end, back end, But you know, it could be any industry. But again, that's my experiences with developers. Um, that, and it's the thing that I said before. Like nobody knows what I know, and everybody's stupid. You know, like I think that's the pervasive thought is that it's everybody should know what I know, and everybody is stupid. And you can't. That's two sides of the same coin. You know, it's either everybody is as smart as you, or you recognize that you know some things that people don't, and vice versa. So I think the pervasive thought is the how did you not know that? You know, and I've had that conversation with developers. I was talking to somebody and I was like, I'm really bad at regex. Like, that's why I'll never be a good backend developer. Regular expressions are just baffling to me. And I remember a guy in grad school say to me, you're a developer. How do you not know regular expressions? And I say, well, they don't really come up in HTML and CSS as often as you might think. You know, but like he just talked to me like I was an idiot for not being good at regular expressions, even though I use them once in a blue moon. So
Fascinating. And I've had similar experiences too. You know, do you think that this is something WordPress specific, or is WordPress better or worse, or is this just technical? The world of technology and people with technical skill sets as a whole across the board. What do you think?
I think it's certainly more across the board than not. You know, I think WordPress, the WordPress community has the same problems because we are inherently a technical community, and the people, you know, the developers are there, right? And I'm totally guilty of it too. I don't want to make it seem like I'm pointing fingers and like I don't do that stuff. I'm totally guilty of it too. Um, I and so. I don't think it's more of a problem in the WordPress community. I think it is technical throughout. And, you know, I've read some theories about why. One specifically was pretty interesting, but I don't know if it's like backed up by anything, but it's like, you know, if you went to high school in the 80s or even early 90s, right, and you were a geek or a nerd or a dork, like you were picked on maybe, because you weren't like the jockish men that you should be or whatever. But now we are in a very technical age where the nerds and the dorks and the geeks have like this level of power over people. Like, oh, if you can fix a computer, you know, you're like a god in 2016. So like maybe it's giving the nerds and the dorks something to laud over the people who originally picked on them. Again, don't know that that's true. I don't buy it completely. I just think it was a pretty interesting theory. But I do think that, like, you know, when you're really good at something, you want to feel really good about it. And I don't know, maybe some people don't know how to best handle that. You know, I guess it's like the cocky baseball player. You know, a programmer, a know-it-all programmer is the same as a cocky baseball player.
How can we as a community get better at this?
I think it really goes back to empathy. And I know I know that other people are preaching that same thing now. It's especially because our field is so diverse now. You know, I'm a front-end developer. I work a lot with HTML and CSS and a bit of JavaScript, but then like my coworkers know JavaScript better than I know English. And then there are the guys I work with who like really know like servers and stuff like that. Like just like it takes a village to build a website now, right? It's not like in the mid 2000s where a high school kid could literally build a full website for somebody and ship it off, right? Now, like, you have the people who are using like Squarespace or WordPress.com to create their own websites for their own like mom and pop shops. But to build like a full website, you need designers and front-end developers and back-end developers, and you need somebody somewhat familiar with servers in some way. And so, you know, I think that we need to kind of take a step back and think about the fact that man, there is a lot to know in our field. And there's no way that anybody could know everything in our field. So I think like empathizing, knowing we don't know, which is like a very Jesuit university thing to say. That's University of Scranton is a Jesuit university. I think it's stuff like that, and then also not assuming that people know what you know is a great starting point. So I think empathy and not assuming are probably great ways to fix what's a problem in definitely the tech fields and probably a lot of other fields too. I'm just not in those fields.
You think as this industry matures and as time goes on, we'll get more to a place where this is more commonly accepted? Where if you're building a house, you recognize pretty inherently, the common person would, that you're probably going to have a plumber and an electrician in addition to the general contractor building the house. These are different roles. It's not going to be handled by just this one fellow. And do you think we're getting there, like a little bit at a time, that the common person is recognizing that all these roles are important, and to get a professional website, like you said, all these roles need to be taken care of, and it's not just some high school kid anymore?
Yeah, I do think we're getting to that point. I think it's an uphill climb because, you see buildings being built or houses being built, but you don't see websites being built. You say, the client will say, I need a website, and then a month later, you have a website. So it's like essentially like, it's like mail away for something. You don't see it getting made, so you think it's pretty easy to make.
It's just in the oven.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that as we educate users more, as we educate our clients more, and people see how these things are being made, I think we absolutely will get there. Just like I just envision like the 16 and 1700s as like everybody knew how to build a house. Just like everybody was outdoorsy and they could, because they had to be, because they were basically in the outdoors. But like, we don't have that anymore, right? Like I can't build a fire, much to the chagrin of my fiance's brothers, because I don't need to know how to build a fire. So I leave it to the experts. So, and I've tried to build a fire and it was hard, right? And now and that's why I'm getting to this point. Point now where people have the ability to build their own websites, right? And they are seeing that it is harder than they originally thought, which is why they recognize the need for a professional. It's like I don't need security for my website until my website gets hacked, and then I see what happens. It's like that sort of thing.
Right. So you're a big fan of cigars.
I am.
Yeah, I think you were generous enough to share one with me the last time we were together. So has that always been an interest of yours?
Not until. So actually, I love this story, and I will precede it by saying, I was that twerpy little kid who would tell people smoking is bad for them. Like that's bad for you. Like nobody wants to hear that. Everybody knows that. It says it on the box. And I'm a portly guy and I had asthma, so I was never really interested in smoking. But in 2009, my grandfather passed away, and my 3 younger brothers and I were cleaning out his house, and we found what turned out to be his last stash of cigars. And so we decided to honor Pop. We would each smoke one of them, and I liked that. It was like a really good bonding experience with my brothers. Then I found out my friends smoked cigars, and for both my birthday and Pop's birthday, I smoked a cigar again, like for Pop. And I just thought it was super interesting. Like there's so much to know about cigars, and they all kind of taste different, and there's like the right way to cut them. So The thing that hooks me in is like there's there's a lot of depth to it. So that's so I've only been smoking cigars, I guess, for five-ish. Well, I guess seven. It's 2016, right? 6 or 7 years, and only recently, like in the last couple of years, regularly. When I first started, it was like once a month at most, and now it's like, oh well, the sun's out, so I'm gonna smoke a cigar.
Whoa.
But yeah.
Wow. That's cool. I mean, it's funny. I totally know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to like these hobbies or interests that we have. I felt this probably like almost an exact parallel. My interest in beer, which currently I am very interested in craft beer. We brew it ourselves and get really into all the different varieties, and sometimes we'll host like kind of beer tasting parties and stuff like that.
Nice.
Get really nerdy about beer. Just fascinated. But there was a time back where I was kind of like, why would I ever want to drink beer? I'll maybe have a Mike's Hard Lemonade or something like that. But what's the deal with beer? I don't get it. I love this kind of like deep dive into a specific interest, and just like I've talked to my siblings and stuff like that about how I think that we always have kind of like this, and this is a weird thing to describe, but like we look at things from the outside and we think that the stuff that we see on the surface is like the interesting stuff that bubbles up to the top, and if we were to like dive in deeper, we would find like the minutia, the boring deep details that only the super nerds care about, when in fact in most cases with most disciplines the opposite is quite true. You dive in and you discover that like it's really the boring stuff that's up on the top, and the deeper you go, the more interesting and fascinating it gets. Has that been kind of your experience too?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like I took a friend to the cigar shop. Just like I had to grab some cigars, and she was looking at them and she's like, "What's the big deal? Don't they all taste the same?" And I said, "You drink wine, right?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Does all wine taste the same? Like, all red wine is red, but there's so much more to it, right?" And that's the thing I love about it, like the outer wrapper, and then like the binder, which is underneath, and like the filler, and like they all come together to create this unique smoke, even between two cigars that are the same, right? So like I could smoke a CAO flathead one day, and it'll be a really great smoke, and then I can smoke it the next day, and it'll still be a great smoke, right? But it'll be different because the CAO flathead is awesome and consistent. But like it'll be two different experiences because either I kept them differently, or just the way the flavors blended together created something different, or I even like I cut it a different way, or I used a butane lighter instead of wooden matches. Like all of these things that seem inconsequential affect the whole experience, and that's so awesome. And like it's something that you can never get bored with because you'll never run out of stuff to experiment with.
That's awesome. Right on, man. Yeah, exactly. I love what you're saying. So we're getting kind of down to the wire here, and about time to wrap up, and it's been really an amazing discussion. So just a couple more quick questions for you. Looking ahead, what's on your calendar for the rest of 2016? Anything that you plan on being physically present for? Any places people might bump into you?
Yeah, well, I was going to go in chronological order, but I think I will go in order of importance. So June 11th of this year is the most important date, maybe in my life. I'm getting married that day, and so I will definitely be physically present for that. And I'm so excited. I'm like at the new apartment now that my fiance and I will be living in when we get married, and then I'm going to Italy for 2 weeks. So going to be awesome. As far as speaking events, I will be at WordCamp Minneapolis this weekend. So find me, say hi. I'll have cigars with me. So we'll have a cigar. And then I don't know if this is like been announced yet, but I will be leading off the speaker session at WordCamp Lehigh Valley, which is a local one here in Pennsylvania. So I hope I didn't just like scoop their story, but
You heard it first.
yeah, I'm keynoting WordCamp Lehigh Valley. So yes. And those are the two that are on my schedule for right now. I plan on applying to a couple more places. WordCamp US, I will be at WordCamp US whether I'm speaking or not. So of course, like that's like the big one. So, but you know, I'm trying to convince Aaron to maybe we could take a weekend trip to New Orleans because I know WordCamp New Orleans is coming up in August. So,
right.
Yeah.
You've got a cordial invitation to a nice little event not too far away in October. So
that's right. I need to apply to that. Rebecca Gill like tagged me in a post about that. Right?
Yeah.
That's same event, right?
Yes.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. I will definitely apply to that one.
Get on it. Deadline's approaching real fast.
All right.
I can't wait to see you there. Who are some people that you strongly recommend that I go and get to be guests on the show in the future?
Oh man, that's a really good question. And without knowing your guest history, I will just start naming people of interest to me.
Okay, this will be fun.
Yeah. Brian Richards. Have you had Brian Richards from WP Sessions on?
Yeah.
All right, good. I'll have to go listen to that one.
A long time ago.
Oh, was it? Oh, you should get him on again. It's like he's in a new role, like crowd favorite and WP Sessions and stuff. So, Matt Pritchett is he's a front-end developer at crowd favorite as well. So space us apart a little bit, I guess. But he's also working on some pretty cool stuff, personal projects. So you know, I think he'd be pretty interesting to have on the show. I'm going to say just like both Chris Lemma and Kareem Maruki, because, well, Kareem is my CEO, but he's also, the man has great stories. And I'm not just saying that to kiss up. Like, it's just, he has very good stories. So, you know, he's somebody I would recommend if you can get him. And one more. Let me pick somebody from like left field, I guess. Man. Well, I'm thinking of like personal friends, so I'll table that one. I'll tweet to you and I'll say like, oh, I just thought of my ace.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are good suggestions as they are. Yeah. This is a few people that I haven't had on the show quite yet, so we will get to them. It's a big community, and I'm working my way through everybody.
Yeah. So, it is a big community, and that's probably my favorite thing about WordPress is like the awesome community.
Oh, it's super great. Super great. Yeah. Well, Joe, I really look forward to hanging out again here real soon. And gosh, less than a month away, like 3 or 4 weeks away.
Yeah, we are right in between 3 and 4 weeks. It's like 25 days, so
pretty exciting.
Yeah, I am. People keep asking me if I'm nervous, and I'm not like nervous, but I'm like, you know, like the excited jitters. To bring it back to Drama Club, it's like the same nervousness you have right before you go on stage. Like You're like real excited and you have this energy. So
yeah. Well, you're also like neck deep in wedding planning, which I was glad to be.
Yeah, I can't wait. Like I'll be sad to have to pay everyone. But I will be happy to have paid everyone. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited for you. It's coming up here pretty quick, so congratulations on that. I mean, I get a chance to talk to you again before then, but if I don't, I hope it goes well, and I hope you guys have a great trip to Italy. Hope to hear about that later. And then we will certainly see each other in, kind of later in the year.
Yeah, hopefully in October.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I need some good people who can teach WordPress.
All right. I'm your man. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Joe. Well, it's been a great discussion. I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to talk with me. Go hang out with the old fiance, and I'm gonna go hang out with my wife, and you have a good night.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, sir. You too.
Thanks, Joe.